Hey everyone, welcome back to AI Insights. I'm your favorite host for today, Fleur Prince. I'm here together with my co-host Gráinne.
Hi everyone, it's good to be back, and this week we're going to be diving into one of my favorite subjects, which is AI governance and specifically the catch-up game. So, how AI governance has progressed to match technological advancement and the mismatch between them.
Yeah, so this week's episode is all about a pattern that's getting harder to ignore. Like you said earlier, we're talking about AI capability and deployment moving faster than the systems meant to govern them. And the governance gap is now showing up everywhere. We're talking about corporate risk disclosure, economic data, and even AI labs publishing their own policy blueprints.
So, in 2026, the question isn't whether AI is transforming the economy, it's whether our institutions can keep up with the speed of deployment, the scale of risk, and the incentives driving it. So, we're going to be asking throughout this episode, where are the regulators, boards, and legal frameworks already drawing lines? And where are they silent? Where are they active? And is it enough? I actually had the opportunity just this weekend to kind of explore nuances of jurisdictional kind of AI policy when I was building in Queen's of University of Belfast, Hack Belfast, which is a hackathon based in Northern Ireland, which was extremely exciting and just very interesting because Northern Ireland, obviously, post Brexit, is no longer considered part of the EU. However, obviously shares an island with the Republic of Ireland, and because of the Good Friday Agreement, has a lot of, kind of unique provisions that enable it to have access to EU benefits. Yeah, so just really interesting stuff. I remember, so Fleur was actually in Ireland recently, and then to go to Northern Ireland, I don't think you had to do an ETF, was it? Which is like a UK visa.
No, I did have to do one.
You did?
It's an ESSA or something like that, similar to the US.
Yeah.
Because I'm still a Dutch citizen. So you have to show it at least that you did it. But I think I got
Yeah.
mine in like 2 minutes. I filled it in because we were supposed to go to the Game of Thrones studio
Yeah.
tour,
Yeah.
and I had it in 2 minutes. I was like, okay, apparently I am allowed to go to
Yeah.
England.
Yeah, I
No
remember
problem.
being like, "Oh geez, I hope that doesn't take too long." I mean, so as a resident of Ireland, I'm not obliged. I don't have to do a visa, but anyway, sorry, but that's the broader dynamic. That's the broader dynamic. How it relates to AI governance is that, Northern Ireland is in a very unique position where people that are building have to build not only for European regulations if they seek to scale, but also specifically Republic of Ireland regulations, UK regulations, and then specific Northern Ireland regulations. They also need to kind of navigate jurisdictional complexities insofar as they are not entitled to benefits of the Republic of Ireland or the broader EU, and they can't even access some of the broader benefits of the actual UK itself. So it's just, I had this opportunity to kind of look at just overlapping jurisdictions and how they can impact
Hmm.
on the ground building, which I found extremely rewarding. And Fleur, I would love to hear your thoughts on AI governance and, yeah, the catch up
Yeah.
game.
No, definitely. I mean, also what we're looking at during this podcast episode is also like where are the communities, startups, and ecosystems feeling the pressure first. And we got some great stories for that. We're going to be covering what the S&P 500s are talking about, what the feds are doing, but also what OpenAI has done, which is publishing their own industrial policy blueprint and what the consequences are of that. So I think a good story at the beginning is actually to talk about the S&P 500, what has happened, because the 500 firms are disclosing AI as a risk. That's what the headline read, but also that I was amazed that compared to 2023 when it was only like 12% of the companies saying that AI is a risk, it's now 83% in 2026. But also like why it matters and also what's driving it. We're talking here about regulatory pressure plus investor scrutiny. Companies are anticipating lawsuits, enforcements, but also reputational fallout.
Hmm.
Also, the thing that you also need to consider is that AI is now embedded in core operations. We're talking about customer services, marketing, hiring, security. So failures aren't isolated, they're systematic. I mean, the conference board press release headline was very statistic in this case. It was 12% to 8%. But also that they were using concrete risk categories to make it real. We're talking here about reputational risk, where they were looking at hallucinations and bias, but also cybersecurity risk, where they're talking about AI enabled phishing and also model misuse. We've already seen this happening with Mythos from Anthropic, which got hacked this week.
Oh, yeah.
No idea who accessed it exactly. I'm sure that they're now on the discovery tour of who actually
Yeah.
accessed it. But that means the model is now somewhere in the world where they were talking about if anyone gets access to this model, the whole world's gonna get hacked.
Yeah. And then
Because the
another
AI
thing.
learns from itself. So it knows where the vulnerabilities are, and then it learns how to avoid them to get into your system. So, and
Whoa.
we're also talking here about regulatory risk as well. So, we talked about that earlier. Emerging rules, audits, disclosure obligations, and what we discussed last week in the podcast was the upcoming deadline of August 2026, where all high risk systems have to be disclosed.
Absolutely. So I'm going to jump in there. I think the first thing that I want to emphasize is that statistic, right? So that's 12% to 83%.
Yeah,
That
like
is,
what?
that's like not comprehensible in the space of what is it? It's 2022, sorry, 2023 to 2025. That's 2 years. So that's 2 years that we're seeing this jump, and we're also seeing regulations kind of stratifying this jump. For example, so yeah, the EU AI Act, you're gonna have to disclose high risk systems, right? High risk isn't like, oh, I have a Terminator model. No, high risk is a lot more nuanced than that. For example, any form of HR, if they have incorporated some form of automation or Gen AI within an HR structure, you're going to have to disclose that as high risk because you're working with such sensitive data. So it's not just the model itself, it's the data and the context that surrounds it. And it takes a lot of, it takes a proactive and kind of, AI literate mind to be able to parse through that and perform those audits. Separately, I would say, just on the topic of like risk, we saw even this week there was huge breaking news. I don't know if you caught wind of this, Fleur, but in the legal world, where a big law firm in the United States, Sullivan and Cromwell, was
Mm-hmm.
caught having hallucinations, AI generated hallucinations in court filings. We've seen
That's
similar
not good.
stories. Yeah, I know. Can you imagine? We've seen similar stories from London. And yeah, we're seeing kind of just this increase. And I mean, like, as a law firm, having to go public and say, this is an AI generated hallucination. That is not an ideal circumstance
Mm-hmm.
for anyone involved, especially within big law. So AI is definitively a risk, whether you're HR, you're using some form of Gen AI within, sensitive data, or you're a law firm just using it to kind of generate reports and there's hallucinations. We're seeing, or as you've pointed out, Fleur, Mythos, and, its ability to hack in. We saw Vercel separately to all this. We saw Vercel get hacked into just last week because they used like a vibe coded AI platform. They had some sort of partnership with like an AI platform and that got hacked. So then Vercel got hacked and et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. We have
Mm-hmm.
we have boundless examples and we're just going to see more and more as, AI continues to integrate. And that's why, it is so essential to kind of to be approaching AI with like a risk perspective as well as an innovation advancement perspective.
No, but we're also talking here about the maturity marker as well for the ecosystem. I mean, when boards are talking risk, startups feel it as a procurement friction. I mean, security questionnaires, vendor risk reviews. But also, you're seeing that founders need to start speaking the governance language early and not slow down, but become more adaptable, especially if they want to build their startup in the EU due to the AI Act. But this also does surge the question as well. Does a surge in AI risk disclosure mean companies are actually governing AI or just preparing to defend themselves when something goes wrong?
That's true. That's completely true. And I mean, risk disclosures are often liability management. They can be honest, yeah,
Yeah,
and they can be strategic, but you need
the
to watch.
PR nightmare.
Yeah, exactly. And we're kind of watching that play out on a global stage, but you need to watch for the legal shift from AI risk is possible to AI risk is foreseeable and must be measured. Otherwise, there will be fines associated, and that's going to change negligence standards. And on the topic of kind of measuring and, the emergence of standards, we're seeing AI adoption becoming macro, and this is our second talking point, which is what happens when the federal government starts measuring AI. So kind of the headline stat here is that the federal government is explicitly monitoring AI adoption in the US economy through 2025 using multiple surveys. So when the central bank tracks something, it signals productivity, labor markets, and inflation dynamics, and it implies a policy question. So if AI changes labor demand, do we need new forms of safety nets, training models, tax structures? So basically, the US government is kind of now tracking AI
Mm-hmm.
The question remains how they're going to track it and if they're tracking it in the appropriate way. Well, I mean, this relates to last week. We were kind of talking about how now now the US government is planning to roll out kind of like a federal sort of regulation. So I guess that's the other side of the coin. They're considering, kind of a federal regulation to overturn the state regulations. They're also trying to look towards tracking AI economic activity, growth, etc.
No, but also, I mean, also if you look at the Fed's like the notes core claim, it uses three publicly available surveys with complementary respondents to examine AI adoption trends, which was pretty interesting to see. But also the optional color for hosts to add is adoption measurement. Is it like kind of messy? But also adoption can mean experimentation in this case. We're talking about like partial deployment or like full workflow replacements. But also looking at the European ecosystem, I mean, US measurements can become a benchmark that shapes the narrative, since the US is very much into accelerating, while Europe is more into regulating. And I think a good question here is also for our audience is how do we make adoption responsible and inclusive, not just fast?
Yeah, completely. And kind of how I would come at that, or how I would kind of, respond to this
How
broader.
would you counter this?
Yeah, how will I is, I just would highlight if AI adoption becomes economic infrastructure, governments may justify using more intervention. So that's standards, reporting, audits, and that regulation that we were talking about last week. It also raises public sector governance, which is if agencies adopt AI, then they inherit due process, transparency, and accountancy obligations. So again, we're just kind of seeing, as the US government starts to stratify its intervention into AI, using it as, kind of a benchmark for economic prowess, what is this going to mean for regulation? That remains to be seen.
No, true. But also, if AI adoption like becomes a macroeconomic indicator, should we treat AI governance like financial regulation or like boring, standardized, and mandatory? Or should it be more exciting? Though I've never known audits to be financial regulations to be exciting unless you're really into numbers.
Yeah, that's never. It's like
Speaking from
saying,
experience, when the time I was working at EY at the audit department.
yeah, no, that's like saying, geez, like that's literally like saying doing your taxes is exciting. Like doing your, I mean, for some people,
I mean,
teach their own.
yeah, I mean it's exciting when your taxes you get some money back from the government.
Yeah, yeah, that's true. I mean, yeah, seriously, to each their own. I mean, some people would find this very boring, talking about AI every week for 2 years. So, anyway,
We found it very much exciting.
yeah,
I
we've been
mean, every
enjoying
week
it.
is. I mean, for me, like AI is like what's happening in the AI world is like watching a Kim Kardashian show. Like the
Yeah, same. And another thing is like I love talking about it with you because none of my friends are interested in it. So it's like this is like my
same.
space to kind of yeah, like no one else is going to talk to me about this. Like literally. So, I kind of have this like outlet to explore it. And even, it's an aspect of my positions, but in a very different way. Like here I can kind of look at the frontier versus I feel like in my positions in like consultancy, I'm kind of working with, more repeatable patterns, like what is like how do I write an AI governance internal policy? So I like the frontier. Diving into our third topic, when AI labs write policy, OpenAI's industrial policy for the intelligence age and the legitimacy question. So OpenAI, so now we've kind of looked at, the S&P that we've seen that there's a risk.
Mhm.
We've seen that the US federal government is taking action and that's, definitely building towards something. We've also seen that OpenAI has released a 13-page policy paper, April 2026, proposing a people-first industrial policy approach, including exploring taxes on AI-driven returns and shifting tax burdens from labor to capital. So that's
Yeah,
getting back to what we were talking about with
yeah.
taxes and making taxes interesting.
No, exactly, but also because I think there was also a comment that came back from Elon Musk, who was indeed talking about getting government support for people who lost their jobs due to AI. So you would get like a
Yeah.
basic income,
Mm-hmm.
and it would be paid by these companies that replaced you with AI.
Yeah, and I mean, here's the thing, like we've talked again and again and again about the amount of layoffs. I mean, it's impossible to ignore. It doesn't matter where in the world you are.
Mm-mm.
Obviously, like I'm a bit more, we rather are more shielded from it. Me being in Ireland, you being in the Netherlands, but the UK and the United States are getting hit like crazy with these different layoffs, and a lot of industries are disappearing or at least getting kind of submerged with, AI helpers. We even use AI helpers with the podcast. So that's restructuring the economy. It's not the same economy that, we would have had years ago. And it's impossible for early careers. So like a UBI, I mean, something I would kind of connect this to is Andrew Yang back in, forget what election it was, but I think it was Hillary versus Donald Trump. I forget what year that was,
Mm-hmm.
but Andrew Yang was running as a Democratic candidate, and he actually kind of popularized the idea, or rather popularized it in a more contemporary sense. It's rare to see a president or someone running for president off the back of a UBI kind of platform, but that's what he was doing. He was saying universal basic income is going to become necessary, and honestly, I think he was proven right nearly by what AI has done to the economy. So I would love to hear your perspective on it.
No, I would love to give my perspective because I mean we're talking here also about like AI labs are trying to shape the policy environment that will govern them, but also the underlying driver here is the fear of the economic displacement, concentration of wealth,
Hmm.
but also the political backlash because you're seeing also now a divide between politicians when it comes to tech, where one says we should push forward
Hmm.
and have AI adopted into every system. I mean, we've seen the Pentagon, for example, signing a contract with OpenAI to get it everywhere in their systems.
Hmm.
Well, another politician, for example, in the European Union, are like, okay, we need to drive up the laws because AI is going to harm our citizens.
Yeah. So there's definitely a tension there.
Yeah, no, exactly. But also, my angle here is since I'm into the whole community management. Community is one agency, so we're talking about policy shouldn't be only like labs for governments, but also they should actually start looking, okay, who's missing at the table right now? Because we're talking about AI affecting everybody. We're talking about workers, educators, civil society, small businesses, but also like local governments. So, and what I mean with local governments is like towns where people have jobs to support themselves. But if AI takes it away, do they need to drive? Already in the Netherlands, you're seeing the problem where, because of the housing crisis, people have to drive 2 hours to get to a job because that's the only place that they will get a job because the rest has been automized.
Yeah, no, and that's just true in Dublin, regardless of any sort of AI policy. We have crumbling infrastructure here. It's ridiculous. Like a 2 hour commute is common. We don't have bullet trains. We don't have like a subway system. We don't have
Mm-hmm.
trains that connect cities easily. For example, like the DART, that's like our like train system, so to speak, or like rather like our kind of internal inner city train system. The bus, like even last night, the I was on the bus, it was faster than the Dart. So that just kind
Mm-hmm.
of goes to show like how our, anyway, I guess besides the point. But yeah, I mean, it really puts pressure on ensuring that there's like appropriate governance and planning, but the question kind of then becomes who has the authority to conduct that planning. We're seeing here that OpenAI is, obviously extraordinarily influential as kind of, maybe even the ringleader for, or rather representative. Like you think of, the AI shift and you think of OpenAI. So obviously they have that influence, but should it be them that are like should this power be granted to them? How much influence should they have like in policy and planning? I mean, obviously they're creating the tool. Is that kind of a conflict of interest? All of those questions are something are things that we should be addressing as we kind of move forward.
Exactly, but also if policy becomes like AI industrial policy, startups may be pushed towards like compliancy ready innovation, which can be good, but may also entrench incumbents. A good example here in the Netherlands is the contract for DigiD. So that's like our version of logging into any government application with our digital ID. Which,
DigiID.
yeah, DigiID, the company
Yeah,
behind it, so Civinity, I think they're called, they are being purchased by an American company. So that would mean that all the data of 18 million people will be on American servers. So it will not be on Dutch
really?
grounds anymore. Yeah. So
Is the government going to do something about that?
no, they're not. They actually
Okay.
there were internal quite a few how do you call it? So in the letter that was written to the minister, they talked about the fact about, hey, this might pose some risks because our data will be across the sea. If the US wants to get to it, they can just access it, which is not a bad thing, but that would mean it's outside of the hands of the Dutch government. And the
Yeah.
minister said, yeah, despite that being a risk, we cannot migrate the data as quickly to another competitor. So we're just going to sign the contract and
And hope for the best.
and hope for the best.
Is that the
despite
plan?
many. That is the plan.
I mean, and but the thing is, there's other options available, like PETs, that's privacy enhancing technologies. Like
Hmm.
there are technical solutions available to enhance privacy. Hope for the best is not that's not
No,
enough for me. My info's on DigiID as well. Like I lived in the Netherlands. Like oh my God, yeah. Especially with like the this
yeah.
how many like kind of hacking and like
With everything
there's
that's happening right now, it's a very interesting policy. That's
hope
I'm
for the
just
best.
it's pretty much hoping for the best. And the funny thing is that in the Netherlands, the biggest protest that happened this weekend was not about this. It was about fossil fuels, and I think it was Extinction Rebellion sitting on the highway to block about that. I'm like, okay, is no one going to protest about this?
Oh my gosh, yeah, you would think because like the Netherlands is like so serious about data privacy as well, especially with
Hmm.
regards to like the US and the U. I mean, who am I to know? Who am I to know? Well, that it'll be really interesting to see how that kind of unfolds. We'll definitely kind of keep an eye on that moving forward.
No, exactly, and we'll follow the minister's idea of just hoping for the best.
I mean, it's a great like philosophy for life, hoping for the best, but not exactly when you're dealing with the data of like what, 80 million people, as you said.
Yeah, but hope for the best.
Yeah, here's hoping. And moving forward, our final talking point is the governance gap in practice, which, really kind of summarizes our last discussion point as well. But here we're going to be looking more at what responsible AI really looks like for 2026. So we've kind of, given plenty of indication as to what responsible AI would not look like. So now we're
Yep.
going to consider what a best practice would be.
No, exactly. So we're indeed talking combined signals that we gave off in the episode. So we're talking about risk disclosure are exploding, adoption is being tracked by the feds, but also labs are publishing policy blueprints, all pointing to the same thing. Governance is no longer optional, it has become mandatory. And I think a good thing here to look at is that teams are deploying AI because of competitive pressure by their boards, and they're doing it with uneven guardrails. But also, the risk isn't only AGI someday, it's mundane harm at scale. I mean, we're talking about discrimination, privacy leakage. Odido here in the Netherlands was a good one where data from all their users got leaked, but we're not talking about like data that was saved for 2 years. We're talking about data that was saved for like 8 years that got leaked. Even people who had ended their contracts long ago got an email. Yeah, your data might have been leaked along with your address, your personal number, and it's now somewhere on the dark web for sale.
I mean, this is what's going to happen with DigiID. I mean, this is exactly what's going to happen with DigiID. And another thing is like the scale and sophistication of like hacking schemes nowadays. Like I look like just this year, an Irish national was imprisoned and then extradited, as in like sent to the like shipped off to the United States.
Mm-hmm.
He was using kind of exploited data or, like hacked or retrieved, obviously unlawfully retrieved data, whatever the means by which a procurement was, pursued, but using
Mm-hmm.
data to conduct like scam calls and like these crypto scans and get all this money. I mean, we're kind of seeing that become more and more sophisticated. Like actually like my grandmother in the Netherlands received a call pretending to be my cousin trapped in Brazil, and my cousin was actually traveling at the time. Anyway, pretending to be my cousin in Brazil. My auntie in Delft. My grandmother in
My
Delft.
goodness. Yeah.
Yeah,
My
gave her
goodness.
a call being like, I need money, like I've lost my passport and I'm in trouble, and like faking like a voice. Obviously, my grandmother's too smart for all that. But yeah, so didn't end up giving the money or whatever, or didn't IBAN the account, but what is it in the Netherlands? Tiki? I don't know. Anyway, regardless, didn't like send the money. But I mean, it's just getting more and more sophisticated. It's crazy, especially with like AI generated voices. Like these are not just, kind of, oh, I don't care who has my data. Like it's not in a vacuum. Eventually it's going to reach a point where they can take the email and just hack it autonomously without any sort of human input on
Mm-hmm.
your side. And we're going to look to do probably an episode on that sometime in the future about like ways to stay protected and everything. But yeah, it's just crazy the scale of everything and how it's been progressing.
Yeah, but also I think governance in this case can be a trust advantage because communities can adopt what they understand, but also encourage community tested norms as well. I mean, we're talking about like sharing playbooks, peer learning, but also be transparent about postmortems.
Oh yeah. Yeah, and then also let's just talk about responsible AI, right? So
Yeah,
what does
yeah.
that look
The
like? Like
most
let's
important
start
part of
with
this,
explain like
this topic.
oh yeah, yeah, yeah. So we've ran through what it is not. What is it though? It's knowing when it is used, number one. So it's knowing all the ways in which it's been implemented. Number two, it's defining what good means, and that's policy, that's metrics, that's quantitative data, that's internal guidelines, that's policies, that's even, a list of instructions for when something goes wrong. Number three, it's human oversight for high impact decisions. So that looks like quality checks. That
Yeah,
looks like,
human in the loop.
human in the loop. Exactly. Words out of my mouth. I wonder if we do this for like 5 years, like I'll say a sentence and then you finish it for me. You know that?
Exactly. We
Like the
will just
first.
know each other's words at this point.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. We'll merge my anyway, but
Yeah.
moving forward.
Back to the
Vendor due
list.
diligence. Huh?
I said back to the list.
Yeah, back to the list. Vendor due diligence and documentation. What does that mean? That is the external partnerships and relationships. That means if you are a law firm using Legora, you're not just internally sound. You don't just have these internal law firm policies. You know Legora's policies and you have documentation with them. You know that they've done due diligence reports and you know that they have the security protocols in place. And then, most importantly, an incident response plan. What happens if things fail? What does that look like? DigiID is hacked. What's the plan? And it's about having the
Exactly.
plan for when DigiID is hacked before DigiID is hacked. And I think that might be the most important part of everything. Anyway, so just kind of to wrap up like my angle on the whole situation and what responsible AI is. Translating, it's just all about translating kind of to legal and practical reality. So documentation is protection. High risk use cases obviously are going to need stronger controls, and we're going to see like kind of we're going to see that come into practice more clearly as the EU AI Act goes into force August 2026. And then claims and marketing, safe, compliant EU AI Act ready, can create liability if untrue. So double check, build a relationship with your vendor. Fleur, would love to hear your perspective on this.
No, true. I mean, I talked about it earlier also, like from a community's perspective. I think governance can be a trusted advantage in this case because communities can adopt what they understand. But also, I think a few key takeaways of this would be that AI is now like a board level risk. It's no longer a side project. I mean, we
Yeah.
talk about disclosure trends show like companies are expecting to show scrutiny, but also adoption is becoming like more economic of the infrastructure. Once like institutions measure it, they start shaping it.
Hmm.
But also legitimacy matters as much as capability. I mean, the future of AI governance depends on who gets to set the rules, but also whose interests are represented. And I think that's the most important part, especially you see the same thing happening now with the EU AI Act, like how much lobbying is happening by governments, by companies, by startups. You name it, there is a lobbyist walking around the EU building in Brussels trying to
Completely.
get their part into the EU AI Act to either make sure that the measurements taken are getting stricter or looser depending on which angle perspective you're looking at
Hmm.
the EU AI Act. But I think this is also a good way for us to end the episode. Yeah, I think I actually summarized everything we talked about. I mean,
Yeah.
we talked about what happened with the feds. We talked about what happened with OpenAI, but also like what the S&P 500 companies are talking about. I
The
mean,
jump in that risk metric. Yeah, go on.
oh my goodness, yeah, I'm still shocked by the 83%, where
Yeah.
it went up like 60%. Oh no, 60, even 70% we're talking about.
Yeah. And
Because, yeah,
hopefully, and a kind of my final point on all of this is that hopefully that number, 83%, will soon translate into real targeted actions on responsible AI, similar to the checklist that we just gave. And I would love to, and my final note is that I would love to see that with regards to DigiID, where my data is, still held. So if we could do a
yeah, I mean,
responsible AI
even as a
checklist
foreign
for
person, your stuff is in there.
yeah, yeah, I lived in the Netherlands. Guys, no, I literally, I still have DigiID downloaded on my phone even. Because like I needed to go into both of the guys, like the tax, like I'm still owed like
Okay.
a tax refund of like 60 euros. And I just never gave them my address. I have to like log in and like ask it. Oh, those blue envelopes? You know how they harass you with the blue envelopes? I
Yes,
literally
forever.
like yeah, I've seen so many like TikTok. Okay, I'm getting off track now. But I would like to see a responsible AI checklist for my Digi ID data. And that's where I kind of sign off. And Fleur, I would love to hear, your perspective on maybe even your DGIT data. No, I'm joking.
No, no.
The Dutch government needs to
I think I
hire
talked
you.
enough. I think I talked enough about like my opinion on the whole GID
Yeah.
and the contract thing that's happening. But I mean, today we also tracked like the governance gap from three angles. We talked about corporate risk reality, macroeconomic measurement, but also the politics of who write the AI policy. The cool thing about, by the way, for next week, where we'll zoom into one practical question, which is what does compliance-ready AI actually look like for small teams without killing innovation? But we'll be interviewing a special guest, which is Matthew Kilbane, who is bringing out his book AI for Humanity. So I think this will be a good touching point
Mm-hmm.
on that as well. If you enjoyed this episode, follow us on AI Insights. We're on Apple Podcasts, Spotify. We're also now on iHeartRadio, Deezer.
iHeartRadio.
Yeah, I was very proud. I got like 2 likes on my Blue Sky account when I
Huge.
posted we're on iHeartRadio.
Huge. We're everywhere, really. Like, where are we not,
At this point, we're
Yeah,
everywhere.
yeah, available in person, as consultants as well. We're
Yeah,
not
you can
just
always
online.
send us an email at bndbinary@gmail.com or look at our website or send us a DM on LinkedIn. We're always happy to answer. If you want links, key stats, or sign up for our newsletter on LinkedIn, always welcome. We're always looking for more subscribers there as well.
Hmm.
Also, one thing I would give away before we close off is for if any board members are listening, I would very much advise you to look into all the AI applications that you've been buying up till now and just making sure that they're going to be AI compliant because that is going to be coming your way in August.
Yeah, audit and document because otherwise the fines
Yeah,
are inordinate.
documentation.
Yeah.
For
I
the love
mean,
of God,
yeah,
documentation.
yeah, the checklist, you always return to the checklist. All right, when with that, thank you guys so much for listening.
Yes, and see you next week.
Bye.
Bye.